You are listening to the Culinary Courtesan, the edutainment podcast about lifestyle, wine, and spirits. Hosted by Yolanda Shoshana. Let's get this party started. Hey, it's Yolanda Shoshana, and you are listening to the Culinary Courtesan. This podcast is formerly known as the Pumphead Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. So this episode, I want to talk to you about a book that I just got, a new book about beer. It's called A Natural History of Beer, and it's by Rob DeSalle and Ian Tattersall, illustrated by Patricia J. Wynn. I really like beer. I don't cover it as much as I probably should because it comes on my radar on and off. Like, I'll get invited to beer events and then it'll be a while before I get another one because there's just so much other stuff going on in the city, or my press trips don't have beer involved. But the first time I really took a good look at beer and what I liked about beer was when I went to Cincinnati, which is a beer drinking town, for Bachfest. It's this really great festival. A goat starts the festival off, and it becomes more and more popular each year because it's all about Bach beer. And I really enjoyed myself there, and I discovered that I really love Belgian beer. Belgian beer is like my favorite. And while Belgium produces about 1% of the beer in the world, they have the most diverse beer. So I love diversity when it comes to spirits. So that's probably another reason why I love that area so much. But I appreciate all other beers as well. Like, I love a good stout every once in a while, or a pale ale. And I love learning the history of beer. So I was invited to the launch party for this book, which was at the Natural History Museum in New York City. If you've never been there, if you're coming on a trip to New York, make some time to go. It is such an amazing museum. Between the dinosaurs, the butterfly collection, the astronomy, there's just so much, and I forget how amazing that museum is. But the museum was closed, and we were the only people there, and they did an event near the dinosaur fossils in this little room where we had beer and we got to talk about the book, and it was just such a good time because the book is definitely for beer geeks. This is also for somebody who wants to learn more about beer. The two authors are actually scientists at the museum. Their first book together was A Natural History of Wine. And they discovered that they both really liked beer, which is how they ended up writing this book. And they, as he said, they did field research. They went to some festivals and did some things together to really get in depth with the beer. But some of the chapters in the book, just so you get an idea of when I say geeky, you'll understand. So the first part of it is about the grains and the yeast. And it talks about where beer came from and how old beer is. Some of you may not realize that women were actually the first brewers. And I knew that already, which it's actually an exciting time for women in beer. More women are getting into brewing and it's being encouraged. So if you are looking to get into the booze business, wine and spirits is great, but don't sleep on beer. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of learning to brew, or social media, and all these other areas that are opening up. So of course we hear every day that the beer world is going through something, and it is going through changes. And then you hear that beer is losing money due to wine and spirits, but beer is a well over $1 billion business, and the shift is actually taking place from the big guys to the craft beer. And Miller Lite may not be doing as well, neither is Budweiser, but they also own a lot of the small craft breweries. So don't forget that. But it is the industry is still making a lot of money, and there's a lot of opportunity. So back to the book. So once again, so it kind of starts off with the history and where beer came from and beer drinking cultures. And then it has elements of every brew, and it breaks down the water, the barley, the yeast, and the hop. And then it goes into the science, the fermentation, the beer and the senses, which is one of my favorite things, and beer and the brain. And then it goes into the frontiers, new and old. and the resurrection of men, and that's really the craft beer scene, which men kind of kicked that off, and thankfully women are now getting back into it, and the future of beer. It was really interesting to hear his take on beer, and beer is older than wine. Even though wine, it seems to be like the popular trendy thing, beer is older than wine. And he was saying that he actually believes that people who brew are able to be more creative, because with wine, it's about terroir, and with beer, it's about your ingredients and what you want to put into it, which I thought was such an interesting take. And I kind of agreed with that, because when you go to France, when you go to Italy, and when you go to Spain, they talk so much about the land, and beer isn't necessarily about that. It's about the ingredients that people want to put in, and what they want to conjure up and what they think will work. Sometimes a brewer makes something, it doesn't quite work, and then they add a different ingredient, and the next thing you know, it's the best beer they've ever had. But there's so many interesting beers now, from watermelon beer to spicy beer to especially in the fall, we've got pumpkin brews now. Like pumpkin beer is like a very popular thing. Then there's Christmas, Yuletime ales. So I too want to discover a little bit more about this beer. We did talk about the future of beer, and none of us knew where it was going to go, because we just have no idea. So much is changing, and every day we'll hear about a brewery going out of business, a brewery we thought was doing well, and then we'll hear about a company being bought that we didn't know was about to be bought. So it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what a Coors Light, Miller, and Budweiser, what they end up doing. They're so old school. I don't think their beers are particularly good, but some of them have been smart enough to buy some really great craft beer. I love craft beer. There's some really good ones out there, and there's just so many to discover. And now everybody's got their own local stuff. If you are visiting New York, we've got a beer trail in the city. In Queens has a lot of different breweries you can go to. So it's just an interesting, exciting time. If you don't know what beer you like, I recommend just trying a bunch of different ones and figuring it out and play around. I used to think I didn't like Guinness, and now I'm starting to realize it's not that I don't like Guinness. It's about the time that I drink Guinness. I prefer cooking with Guinness more than I like drinking it. Cooking with beer is also a whole other culture on its own as well. Maybe you don't like drinking beer, but it's really great when you throw it in the crock pot and you make a stew or a little bit on some chicken. Great to cook with. Beer battered fries. Have you ever had anything bad that's been beer battered? I don't think I ever have. So it's great to cook with. There's just lots of things that you can do with beer. So I highly recommend, if you are looking to understand beer a little bit more, A Natural History of Beer is a great book. If you are a beer geek, you're going to love this book. And if you're looking for a gift for a beer geek, this book is totally up your alley. And it was produced by Yale University, and it came out last week. So, because I went to the event like 2 weeks ago, the book is fresh, hot off the press. And I'm sure you can get this on Amazon and all your other bookstores. I can't imagine you wouldn't be able to find it since it's Yale Press. But once again, it was just such a fun event, and I got to try this really great beer from Colorado I had never tried. So there's just some really good stuff being made, and I definitely will be covering a little bit more beer. I know a new Game of Thrones beer is coming out this week, if I'm not mistaken, and it's Belgian style. I loved the other Game of Thrones beers. They're made in upstate New York. They're really good if you haven't had them. So I definitely am going to have to check that out. And if there's a beer, though, that you think I should try, let me know, because I could pretty much get anything in New York City for the most part. Though when I was in Cincinnati, there was some beer that I really liked, and they were coming to the East Coast and they were going to Philly first. I was so jealous. I thought, hey, what about us? Cincinnati has great beer. They're a great beer town as well. If you are looking for a beer destination in the States, I guess everybody now has their own really good beer, but definitely don't sleep on Cincinnati. And I keep telling everybody that they love a good cocktail, whiskey, beer, but I'd say beer is really something they are proud of, and they make a lot of good beer. Their beer district is making a comeback. There was a time that they had a lot of breweries in the area, and it's all making a comeback. So don't sleep on Cincinnati next time you want to get your beer on. So until next time, peace, love, and cheers. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter, Pumpette. Peace.